a grand vision for a piece of Effingham County wilderness.
It had solar trees, it had canals where you could kayak from building to building.
I think we could probably build an office building cheaper on our property for New York scene than go rent it in Manhattan itself.
A plan that sounded too good to be true, and it was.
My $1,000 investment was worth about $8.
Legal, ethical, those are really two sort of separate questions.
And who's holding the bag?
You know, it's a lot of money being spent for a piece of woods that's just a piece of woods.
Was it a failed business plan, or was this the plan all along? Tonight, WTOC is going behind the scenes of Moon River Studios in Effingham County on this edition of WTOC Prime. Just beyond the busy highway of I-16 in Effingham County are 1,500 acres owned by the Industrial Development Authority. There's not much to see other than this water tower, a few dirt roads, and maybe some farm animals. But residents around here will tell you they expected this place to look a lot different by now.
You know, eventually I knew it would be developed into something.
Richard Sapp can see the property from his yard.
You know, they've spent an awful lot of money here and nothing's been done.
He's talking about the $200,000 of taxpayer money that the Effingham County Industrial Development Authority put towards a private-public partnership, building the largest studioplex of its kind in North America.
And I do think that the business plan and the approach that they were taking was still a very legitimate one that was needed in the market.
In 2013, Mediant Studios, an international company, announced they were building a state-of-the-art campus that would include sound stages, production lots, and post-production facilities. CEO Manu Kumaran founded Mediant back in 2002, making movies in India, Europe, and Canada.
I've always raised money through my own sources.
In a Skype interview from London, Manu told us how he built his business from the ground up. And by 2013, he decided to expand to the U.S., trekking new territory with something that had never been done before.
I think the film industry needs correction.
His goal was to design a studio that would help the movie industry become more cost-effective.
So things have to change. And people like Spielberg and Lucas are saying that films cost too much money.
It was an ambitious and expensive project, a $90 million studioplex that was going to be energy efficient, using solar and hydropower. In addition, there would be an amphitheater, recreational sites, and a video gaming complex, promising to expand the workforce in Effingham County by 15%.
We don't have the money. We had to raise the money.
Most of his projects in the past, he was able to raise money and get the funding from his own sources and connections in the business. And he says he never announced a project that didn't come to fruition. But the business model for this project changed when he says he met Jake Shapiro, a former penny stock trader from New York, who was willing to help him raise money.
Anybody says he can raise money for you, we'll take them seriously. He schmoozed me, he wooed me, and he had got some people who, I kind of looked up to in a sense. His only purpose was to raise money. And that's the only part of our entire operation that didn't perform.
Manu says Shapiro was trying to raise money in a way that he had never done before.
It's not a proud thing for me to know that, to tell you that a lot of people got hurt because the company borrowed money from these toxic lenders.
Hindsight is 20/20, but he says at the time he trusted Shapiro.
He was the expert. Right? I'm just a simple man from a poor country. I'm a filmmaker, so I didn't really know.
And that wasn't the only thing he didn't know when this special of WTOC Prime returns.
Because it makes no sense. How do you get thrown out of your own company?
A federal investigation is launched after a hostile takeover of Mediant Studios. By the summer of 2014, what had seemed like a dream come true for Effingham County was quickly turning into a nightmare. Promises to build a multi-million-dollar movie studios was crumbling before a foundation was even laid.
So they look at the situation, the board, and say, oh, we're not making enough progress. What's the problem? We haven't raised enough money. So who do we reward? The guy who's supposed to raise the money. And who do we get rid of? The guy who's doing everything else.
International filmmaker Manu Kumaran says he spent 12 years building his business from the ground up, and while he was in the process of expanding his business here in the U.S., he got a call saying the board had just voted to oust him as CEO, naming Jake Shapiro as the new CEO.
First I thought it was a joke. I said, is this a joke? Jake, what's going on?
But it was no joke. He says not only was he kicked out as CEO, but according to the SEC, 40 million of his shares were also given to Shapiro.
I was literally left stranded. They canceled my credit cards, my debit cards. I was left stranded in Los Angeles with no money.
At the time, median stock prices were at an all-time low. Shares were trading at 0.02 of a penny. Manu says prices had never been this low until Shapiro started working for him, convincing him to change his business model of raising money.
It's the structure which there are these specialized funds in New York which prey on small companies. Their business model is predicated on your price going down.
And on top of that, he says they were also selling more shares than they really had.
I asked Jake, how is this possible that we're trading more shares than that exists in the market? How is it possible? And he would give some wishy-washy answers. And finally, I cornered him and his lawyer, and they said, look, it may be illegal, there's no way to prove it, and it's not up to us, it's up to the SEC, and the SEC don't look at these companies at this level.
But the SEC did get involved. Just days after Manu was pushed out, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission shut down trading on Mediant for 10 days because of, quote, questions raised about the accuracy and adequacy of publicly disseminated information. And according to sources close to WTOC, Mediant is currently under investigation by the IRS and SEC. Manu filed a lawsuit against Shapiro and the board because he says he lost nearly $15 million that he invested in the company that he founded. But he never pursued the lawsuit because he says the legal bills were mounting.
I'd invested cash, my own money and from friends, totaling about $700,000. And then in March, see, look at how carefully this guy has planned everything. In March, he comes to me and says, look, our share price is taking a beating, which is the obvious result of all the toxic debt that he had accumulated. You need to do something to prove to the market that you're serious and you believe in this company. And so if I hadn't done that, this whole takeover wouldn't have happened, because then I would have this outstanding loan, which they owed me, and there would be no incentive to do it.
And while he lost everything, he believes this may have been the plan from the very beginning.
So, but we had built a company which had real shareholders with real trading volume. And I think he wanted to grab that.
He says when he first met Shapiro, Shapiro was attempting to do the exact same thing to another CEO, trying to overthrow the founder of Seven Arts Entertainment, Peter Hoffman.
At the time, Jake got back in touch with me saying that he was not happy with the way Peter was running the company and he wanted to fire Peter from Seven Arts, and he had spoken to some of the board members and they were all in agreement. And he asked me if I would be interested in coming on board to run Seven Arts for the board. And, you know, I was non-committal. I was quite curious to see what was happening because Peter was Seven Arts.
He says Shapiro was unsuccessful, but it didn't matter because Seven Arts later flopped when Hoffman was convicted in 2015 for tax fraud. Officials say he was scheming to mislead Louisiana officials about how many film tax credits he was entitled to. And so Shapiro went to work for Manu, ignoring what he says were possible signs were foreshadowing.
Looking back, I'm stupid. You know, there's no reason to assume that Leopard's going to change its spots.
Coming up, a new CEO and a new company name. But was it all part of a very old plan?
But Jake has a pattern of doing this. He's done it before, and this is what he does.
And did Effingham County officials have any idea?
Do you think that there was anything illegal going on?
I'm not going to comment on that.
After a hostile takeover of Mediant Studios in June of 2014, a lawsuit that had been filed by the former CEO, and an ongoing federal investigation involving the IRS and the SEC. The new CEO of Mediant Studios, Jake Shapiro, was already meeting with members of the Effingham County Industrial Development Authority about moving forward with a project to build a multi-million-dollar studioplex.
When the coup occurred, we realized, not necessarily suspicion, but we realized that the project was going to change. And so we went back and we had to vet the project again, and we talked with Mr. Shapiro.
Shortly after the takeover, the name of the company was changed from Mediant to Moon River Studios because Manu still owned the rights to the Mediant name. WTOC sat down with Shapiro last year about his new plans as CEO.
The former CEO's vision was far more grandiose, which included building a suspension bridge made out of glass that may have been the largest suspension bridge in North America, building round sort of sound stages with minuets made of crystal or gold. Our vision is very tight, very concise, very organic. You build a business the old-fashioned way. You do it one step at a time.
But Shapiro, who had taken over this filmmaking company, had very little experience in the film industry. In fact, he began his career on Wall Street.
I started off on Wall Street. Started off at $8 an hour in the back office. By the end of the summer, became the youngest assistant trader in the firm and became the youngest principal and executive vice president of the firm. I was there a very interesting time in history. For those who've seen Wolf of Wall Street, yep. I was there right when .com was exploding. I remember when Jordan Belfort landed his helicopter on our building. Our company took his company public. His company took our company public.
Even joking about some of the inaccuracies of the blockbuster film.
And then there's a big target, and they get launched at the target. They stick.
Yeah. So we never tossed the midget against the Velcro wall. We did it for distance.
And while his former penny stock trader had high hopes for Moon River Studios, the company never made it off the ground under Shapiro's leadership. In March, Moon River terminated their lease agreement they had with Effingham County, officially ending their private-public partnership to transform 1,500 acres into a mini Hollywood.
You know, we continued to act in good faith and work with the company as it progressed and tried to come to terms with them on something that would be qualified that they could maneuver around, and in the end it just hasn't panned out thus far.
According to financial filings with the SEC, in 2014, Moon River didn't make a dime but lost more than $1 million. And in 2015, they lost $6 million and only made $18,000. And Effingham County officials say they lost about $200,000 in tax dollars alone.
There was a brokerage commission, then there were some attorney's fees and some other miscellaneous towards groundbreaking, those type things.
But there wasn't much to show for it other than this well that was built.
What did they spend $6 million on? Yeah, they have no employees. They pay themselves a lot of money now. But what have they done?
They lost $6 million last year, and they produced $18,000.
We have other companies in the county and in this region that probably lost $6 million last year as well. Like I said, we don't vet them on their day-to-day operations.
And we aren't the only ones asking that question when this special edition of WTOC Prime returns.
Certainly, a lot of money has been invested and a lot of money has been paid in. What exactly happened to it, I don't know.
Savannah attorney Charles Bowen, who goes by Bo, represents at least a half a dozen people in and around the Savannah area who say Moon River still owes them money after the multi-million-dollar project fell through to build a state-of-the-art studioplex just off of I-16 in Effingham County.
Most people, some that were actual employees of the company itself, others that were there to provide services, independent contractors, that type of thing. The one thing they all have in common is simply empty promises.
Today, Moon River is owned and operated by Phonu 2, but Bo says he's having trouble settling because Phonu 2 only bought Moon River's assets, not their liabilities.
They very specifically state that as every time they change their name, oh, we're buying this asset, we're buying the equipment, we're buying the rights to different stories, but we are not purchasing any of the previous debts or liabilities of the company. So it makes it extreme, and then that obviously that original company just goes out of business. So it makes it extremely difficult for someone that's sitting there with a contract with company A to then try to collect anything from company B that's taken over, because they'll hold up that piece of paper and say, no, I don't owe you. That now defunct non-existent company owes you, so good luck.
Right now, he's trying to avoid filing a lawsuit, hoping he can just settle this with the former CEO, Jake Shapiro, outside of court.
In fairness, occasionally some of those payments get made. Most of the time, they do not. And even in trying to work out these matters on behalf of my clients, we'll get to a point where they will hold their nose and say, okay, if he's willing to do at least this much, we will resolve the matter. And then when that doesn't get paid either, it's a very frustrating and aggravating and annoying type of negotiation to be involved with.
But others weren't willing to wait. Some lawsuits have already been filed against Moon River. A former Moon River investor filed this complaint. He wasn't willing to go on camera, but he told me it wasn't so much about the money as it was about exposing the company, claiming they violated SEC regulations and wasted corporate assets. But unfortunately, those who are pointing fingers at Mr. Shapiro stretch beyond the Savannah area, going as far as the West Coast and dating back more than 10 years when he was involved in the wine business.
I've certainly read the Forbes article about what happened out in California.
An article titled Corkscrewed back in 2008 when Shapiro was CEO of 360 Global Wine says he burned through roughly $55 million in cash, left behind $30 million in unpaid bills, and racked up a shareholder deficit of $105 million. And in 2009, he was accused of squandering more than $600,000 of winery funds to buy a mine company that failed.
We are talking about, when we're talking about Moon River and Fanyu, we're talking about very intelligent and sophisticated business people with a lot of experience. This isn't somebody that just, decided to open a business out of their garage and then, turned out they didn't make enough money and couldn't pay people. The way this has been structured with all the different layers and all the different transfers, this was done by someone, by a group of people with a lot of intelligence, a lot of knowledge, and if you set out to make things difficult, typically you can.
And difficult is an understatement for those who have been left to pick up the pieces.
People that have uprooted, moved to this community solely based upon these promises that were made to them.
And it's something that I feel very responsible for.
This special edition of WTOC Prime will be right back. It's now been 3 years since the announcement was made to transform 1,500 acres in Effingham County into the nation's largest studioplex. While the plans failed, it's a story that may keep folks talking around these woods for quite some time.
Maybe that was just a dream come true and they thought they could make it happen.
Effingham County residents like SAP are wondering why the IDA didn't do more research about who all was involved with this project.
We required some confidential disclosures of their financials, where their funding was coming from, those types of things.
Was there any concern there at that point?
No more so than some of the other startup operations that we've worked with.
Did you know anything about Jake?
The day I met Jake was the first time I met Jake. I knew nothing about Jake.
From the looks of it, not much has changed around here, but the storm left a huge wake that may take folks years to recover from. County officials say they've recovered $130,000 of that $200,000 they lost. But they don't expect to see the rest of that money, and they don't plan to file a lawsuit. But others can't afford to give up.
It's personally devastating to them when they don't get paid or these promises aren't kept. They're having to just pick up the pieces and start over like anybody else would.
Because a lot of people lost a lot of money, and it's something that I feel very responsible for, because eventually they believed in me. They didn't know Shapiro. My biggest regret is not what it's done to me and how difficult it's been for me to come back. It's more for a lot of people. There's this elderly gentleman who came and talked to me after the groundbreaking in Effingham, and he said he's putting his money into our company. He's buying our shares for his daughter. He's pulling money out of his retirement fund. So people like that haunt me. I think of the people who really believed in me, in what we were trying to do, and the general investing public.
As for Manu, he spent 3 years trying to salvage what was left of his business in Europe. He never came back after the takeover.
And I really miss living in Savannah. That's the truth. Right? So I kind of got into a groove and I thought I was going to retire there.
As for Jake Shapiro, he's still around. He declined going on camera for an interview, but says he's chairman of the board of FONU 2 and says they've just wrapped up filming the movie Mara in the Savannah area. And with or without this state-of-the-art studioplex, the movie business is stronger than ever.
What's happening with Moon River is very much the exception, not the rule. And for the most part, 99.9% of the people that I have dealt with in this industry are very honorable, people of their word, and very hardworking and legitimate.
So while this community didn't get the studios they were promised, perhaps they got the storyline for Savannah's next movie instead.